talked a little bit about the census decision here. A lot of critics have concerns that including the citizenship question will discourage immigrants from participating. Can you talk us through how the government is going to address those concerns?
Look, this is a question that's been included in every census since 1965, with the exception of 2010 when it was removed. We've contained this question that's provided data that's necessary for the Department of Justice to protect voters and specifically to help us better comply with the Voting Rights Act, which is something that is important and a part of this process. And again, this is something that has been part of the census for decades and something that the Department of Commerce felt strongly needed to be included again.
Okay, that was White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders at yesterday's briefing, defending Monday's decision by the Commerce Department to include a question about citizenship status in the 2020 U.S. Census. Joining us now, professor at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas, MSNBC contributor Victoria DeFrancesco Soto. So, Victoria, we'll just start with the most basic question here. Was Sarah Sanders accurate right there?
Mika, I'm going to give Sanders a 3 on the truth-o-meter. So what happened was we had the citizenship question on the census up until 1950. It was dropped. It didn't appear in the 1960 census because we had such low levels of immigration. And then it was put back on in 1970 in the long form. And this is the key detail, Mika, because the long form census is a deep dive into the statistical details of various socioeconomic status indicators, but only about 16% of the population gets the long form. So the vast majority of Americans get the census short form, which is what we know of as the census. So 1970, 80, 90, 2000 had the short form with the majority of the population. That was dropped in 2010 because we moved to a new statistical tool called the American Community Survey. All of this to say that it is a vast overstatement to say that citizenship was on the census. It was just a small piece of a statistical tool called the long form.
All right, so then why is it a problem? Explain your concerns, if any, about this change at this point.
Well, at the end of the day, with the census, you want as many people to answer as possible. And the more burdensome you make a survey, whether it be longer or whether it asks sensitive questions, that makes people less likely to answer. And given this climate right now, how we see immigration politicized, immigrant folks are weary of answering, especially undocumented persons, but also normal immigrants and persons of color. So you're going to have undercounts. That's going to affect one of the main purposes of the census, which is redistricting, federal funding, and as a scientist, as a social scientist, a total headache in terms of statistical modeling, because a lot of survey work weights data based off of the census, which is supposed to be the most complete count of any statistical tool out there. So just so many problems here, political and methodological, with including this citizenship question.
Victoria, how do you think this so given that we have now this controversy, given that we have all the potential problems that this raises, how do you see the politics of this now playing out as we go forward? Is there a chance that this can be headed off at the pass, or are we going to get stuck with it and all the problems you just described?
All right, well, I'm going to defer to my legal scholar colleagues on this, but I do think we're going to see a very hard fight in the courts with this. We saw yesterday with Attorney General Javier Becerra trying to block it off, leading up the California effort. But the irony here is that red states would also be hurt. So here in Texas, we have the second largest undocumented population, so we would probably lose congressional seats because of this ad. And we also know that the highest rates of Latino population growth are in the New South, so your Arkansas, your North Carolina, so they would also be affected. So in terms of this only hurting California and some other blue states, that is completely incorrect.
All right, Victoria, thank you very much. We're going to take a moment now for final thoughts. We'll start with Gene. Take it away.
Well, maybe this makes me a bad person, but really what I take away from this morning is Stormy Daniels and Michael Avenatti and this tabloid war that I think is going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Heidi.
And there's a reason why Trump's been so quiet. We spent a lot of time talking about why. Well, it's pretty simple. The minute he opens his mouth, he's going to be asked two questions where if he's deposed under oath, he could perjure himself. Did you have the affair? did you authorize the payment? And that's why even some folks like Alan Dershowitz now are saying this is a bigger legal problem for him than you think.
Earlier today, we
Yikes.
showed a clip of the president's family disembarking from Air Force One, his wife and his youngest son. And it's, I think, essential now to separate your feelings out there from what you feel about the president to the family. And the toll that it is taking on that family is got to be horrendous.
Michael Avenatti, and Arnie Becker. Go watch LA Law. What a great show. Go check it out.
Finally, Joe.
What a great show indeed. And China meeting with North Korea's leader. We were supposed to pivot to Asia repeatedly over the past decade. We haven't done so. So the United States is more marginalized in that vital region than ever before.
It's only Monday. That does it for us for now. Chris Jansing picks up the coverage right now.
Mika and Joe.